Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome to another deep dive. Today, we're cutting through the noise on some of the biggest topics shaping our world to give you the clarity you need to truly understand what's happening beneath the headlines.
Yeah, and what's fascinating here is that we've pulled together, well, an incredible stack of sources for you. Everything from major financial news outlets like Fox Business and CNN Business to, detailed economic analyses. Our mission today is basically to distill the most important insights, connect the dots across these pretty complex topics, and maybe reveal the underlying dynamics at play.
Right. We're talking about the accelerating AI revolution and its, well, sometimes surprising impacts, the ever shifting landscape of global trade, significant economic policy changes, and even how things like TikTok trends are moving markets. So, yeah, get ready to see how seemingly disparate events are actually deeply connected. The deep dive. Unpacking today's key global developments. All right, let's kick things off with artificial intelligence, AI. It's a theme that's truly transforming, well, everything. We're seeing Wall Street betting big, and I mean really big, on AI right now.
Oh, definitely. We have a remarkable example with the new IVE AI Revolution ETF. This was launched by Wedbush Securities and their top tech analyst, Dan Ives. This fund, it only started in June, right? And it's already raked in nearly $400 million.
Wow, $400 million already.
Yeah, and it's up a substantial 11%. So it's significantly outperforming major indexes like the NASDAQ Composite and the S&P 500 in its very first month.
That's huge. And Ives himself, he's got, what, 25 years in tech? He calls AI the biggest theme he's ever seen.
He does. He's predicting a staggering $2 trillion in spending over the next 3 years.
$2 trillion.
Uh-huh. And his analogy, he says we're still in the bottom of the first inning of this whole AI game.
Bottom of the first, so still incredibly early days, real.
Exactly. And what that bottom of the first inning comment really crystallizes for us is we're not just witnessing a massive investment surge. We're seeing a foundational re-engineering of how basically every sector, from finance to entertainment, is going to operate.
Makes sense.
And the ETF itself, it includes major players, Microsoft, Palantir, Meta, Tesla, Palo Alto, and of course the AI chip giant NVIDIA. So it reflects AI's broad impact across semi-software, infrastructure, autonomous tech, right, all of it.
Right.
Wedbush believes their approach, this active insight and passive structure, leveraging AI's proprietary research, gives them a unique edge over, say, larger passively managed AI funds. And interestingly, even with all the talk about U.S.-China trade tensions, ICE's conviction remains, well, absolutely unshaken.
Okay, so we've seen how AI is disrupting big finance, but its reach extends way beyond investment portfolios, right? It's actively transforming daily operations, even something as fundamental as hiring, like this Chipotle story using an AI hiring tool.
Avocado.
Yeah, Avocado. It's a conversational chatbot created by Paradox, and it's helping Chipotle find new workers 75% faster.
75%,
Yeah.
that's a massive difference.
It really is. It's dramatically cutting the time from application to ready to hire from like up to 12 days down to just 3.5.
Wow. So what does it actually do?
Well, imagine it's managing interview schedules, it's answering candidate questions, and it's boosting application completion rates to an impressive 85%.
Okay, I can see how that's huge for a company like Chipotle, especially with their growth plans. They're hiring, what, thousands annually?
Exactly. They project 9,000, 10,000 new hires annually, so this efficiency is absolutely critical. But it's important to note, though, that Avocado does not screen resumes or make the actual employment decisions. Human managers still handle those crucial steps. Right. Okay. That's a key point.
Definitely. And, we've also seen a recent security vulnerability reported by Paradox, though thankfully no data was actually leaked from that specific incident. But it just highlights the ongoing need for vigilance as AI handles more and more, personal data.
Good point. And beyond these sort of practical, everyday applications, the ambition in AI is scaling incredibly rapidly. Companies like Meta are now in this frantic, high-stakes race to achieve artificial superintelligence, right? Pushing the very boundaries of what AI can do.
Oh, yeah. Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg is reportedly shelling out huge sums. There are claims of $100 million signing bonuses for top talent just to beat rivals like OpenAI and Google.
$100 million signing bonuses. That's wild.
It is. And Meta's strategy involves massive investments in data centers and chips, sure, but it's equally about the people, the talent. They've brought in heavy hitters like Alexander Wang, the Scale AI founder, and Nat Friedman, former GitHub CEO, to lead their new superintelligence labs.
Wow. Big names.
Huge names. And also Shengjia Zhao, who is actually a co-creator of ChatGPT over to OpenAI. She's now their chief scientist. This really aggressive recruitment just underscores the belief that having the right team is absolutely paramount, even with billions poured into infrastructure. It really shows how much of a talent war this has become.
Yeah, no kidding. Speaking of big tech and essential infrastructure, we just heard about a huge deal. Elon Musk announced a $16.5 billion chip deal between Tesla and Samsung Electronics.
Right. Samsung's new factory down in Taylor, Texas, is set to produce Tesla's next-gen AI6 chip. And Musk says he'll walk the line personally to accelerate the pace of progress at the facility. Typical Musk flair.
Yeah. But
Right.
this is a big win for Samsung, isn't it? I heard the factory was having issues.
It is a significant win. Their Taylor fab, it reportedly had virtually no customers and faced delays. It also really highlights the fierce competition in the semiconductor foundry market. That's where companies like Samsung and TSMC actually manufacture the chips designed by others.
Right, the manufacturing side.
Exactly. And Samsung holds only about 8% of that crucial global market compared to TSMC's dominant 67%. So yeah, this Tesla deal is a pretty vital lifeline for them in a highly concentrated industry.
Okay, so AI is impacting billion-dollar deals, hiring, and now even classic movies in Las Vegas.
Yeah, it's kind of wild. The Sphere in Vegas is now using AI outpainting with Google Cloud. They're basically expanding the classic 1939 film The Wizard of Oz to fit its massive 160,000 square foot wraparound screen.
Expanding The Wizard of Oz, how does that even work?
AI generates the imagery needed to fill the extra space beyond the original film's frame, trying to match the style. And it comes complete with haptic seating and spatial audio too. Opens August 28.
Crazy. Okay, but with all this innovation, the risks, you mentioned data earlier.
Yeah, and that's the flip side. As AI brings incredible innovation, it undeniably carries significant new risks. Look at the recent T-dating advice app data breach. It saw 72,000 images accessed, including 13,000 user verification selfies.
Oh, wow. Selfies, that feels particularly sensitive.
It really is.
Yeah.
This biometric data point is deeply unsettling because unlike a password you can just change, your face, your fingerprint, that's permanent. Experts warn that a selfie, if combined with, say, a government-issued ID, could potentially be used for things like bank account hacks.
That's scary.
It really underlines that in this AI age, data security isn't just about protecting your login anymore. It's about safeguarding your fundamental identity. Makes you think twice about what permissions you grant apps.
Definitely. Okay, let's pivot now to the global economy. Trade policies have really been dominating headlines. The big news recently was the US-EU trade deal, which President Trump announced from Scotland.
That's right. This framework agreement sets a 15% tariff on most EU goods imported into the U.S., which, is half of the 30% Trump had previously threatened.
Okay, so lower than threatened, but still 15%. What did the EU give in return?
Well, the EU committed to purchasing $150 billion in U.S. energy and making $600 billion in other investments in the U.S. But while some saw this as a win for, stability and predictability, not all European leaders shared Trump's enthusiasm.
Oh, like who?
Well, the French prime minister apparently called it a submission, and others described it more neutrally as, like, the least bad alternative.
Submission. Strong language. So, from Trump's perspective, it's about stability, but some in Europe see it very differently. What's the underlying tension there?
It really speaks to the deeper power dynamics, I think. Europe likely views these tariffs, even at 15%, as a significant imposition on their exports, maybe forcing them into concessions they wouldn't otherwise make. That submission comment probably reflects a frustration with feeling like they're negotiating under duress, and maybe a concern about setting a precedent for future trade talks where tariffs are the main weapon, rather than, established trade norms.
Interesting point, and I heard wine and spirits weren't included initially.
Correct. The European wine and spirits industry was excluded from this initial deal. A separate agreement is expected in the coming weeks, and that's a huge market for U.S. spirits. They imported $1.2 billion in 2024.
Okay. This deal follows a similar one with Japan, right? That also had investment commitments and a 15% tariff.
Exactly. Japan's deal included $550 billion in U.S. investment and that same 15% tariff on its imports. But, while investors initially seemed to welcome these developments, the market's reaction on Monday was surprisingly muted. The S&P 500 closed mostly flat.
So even these deals aren't necessarily calming market nerves completely.
It seems not. It's a reminder that even 15% tariffs, while lower than the 30% threatened, can still act as a drag on economic growth and potentially increase prices for consumers down the line. As former Commerce Secretary Carlos Gutierrez warned, protectionism doesn't protect. It strips a nation of its vitality.
And And there's still the China situation looming, right, with the August 1st deadline for Trump's tariff rates.
Precisely. Everyone's watching the U.S.-China trade talks, which is cautiously resumed in Stockholm. There's a global trade simulation that forecasts China's exports to the U.S. could drop by a massive $485 billion by 2027, while U.S. trade to China could fall by about $101 billion.
Huge numbers. Any idea who benefits from that shift?
Well, interestingly, the simulation projects that Russia is set to gain the lion's share of increased trade with China as these other flows change. And we're already seeing signs of this slowdown in practice. There's been a decline in Chinese exports to the U.S., visible in ocean freight data, which is usually considered a pretty solid leading indicator of fewer container ship arrivals down the road.
Okay, and which parts of the U.S. feel this the most?
According to the analysis, the states of Texas and California are expected to bear the brunt of this decline in trade with China. It impacts major industries, everything from electrical machinery to optical equipment.
So what does this all mean for, the average person? For you listening?
Yeah, this is critical for consumers. The current tariffs have already pushed the effective U.S. tariff rate from around 2% historically up to 18%. That's the highest it's been since 1934 during the Great Depression.
18%. Wow. What does that translate to cost-wise?
Well, some economists estimate this could add up to $2,400 per year in extra costs for the average American household. So, yeah, while these policies are debated at the macro level, their impact is really felt in your pocketbook through potentially higher prices for all sorts of goods, electronics, clothes, you name it.
Okay, $2,400 a year. That's significant. All right, shifting gears a bit now to your personal wallet, let's talk about some changes that might impact charitable giving. There are new rules for charitable contribution deductions coming, part of President Trump's recent tax and spending cuts package. They take effect in 2026.
That's right. If you don't itemize your deductions, which is most people these days,
Yeah.
you'll actually see a significant increase in what you can deduct for cash donations. It goes up to $1,000 for single filers, $2,000 for joint filers. That's a big jump from the $300, $600 limit they had during the pandemic era.
Okay, so that's good news for non-itemizers. What about people who do itemize?
Well, for them, there's a new twist. You can only deduct cash contributions that exceed 0.5% of your adjusted gross income, your AGI.
Exceed 0.5%. Can you give an example?
Sure, let's say your AGI, your adjusted gross income is $100,000, and you donate $2,000 in cash. Under the new rule, you can only deduct $1,500 because the first 0.5% of your AGI, which is $500 in this case, isn't deductible anymore for itemizers.
Ah, okay, so there's a floor now. And wasn't there something about the top tax bracket too?
Yes. If you're in the top tax bracket, currently 37%, the value of your deductions will be capped as if you were only in the 35% bracket. So a slight reduction in the tax benefit for high earners.
Definitely something for people to factor into their financial planning for 2026 and beyond.
Absolutely. Another area of personal finance that comes up a lot is car ownership, specifically dealing with unexpected repairs, especially on older cars. Let's talk about something called mechanical breakdown insurance, or MBI.
MBI, okay, I've heard of it, but I'm not sure I totally get it. It's not regular car insurance, right?
No, it's different. It's designed to cover unexpected mechanical or electrical failures, things that happen due to sort of normal wear and tear, usually after your manufacturer's warranty is expired.
Okay, so it's like a safeguard for those potentially big, expensive repairs, like the engine, transmission, electrical systems, stuff that can really hit your wallet hard.
Exactly. It covers those kinds of major component failures. It can sometimes be an add-on to your regular car insurance policy, or you can buy it as a standalone policy.
How does it compare cost-wise to, say, getting an extended warranty from the dealership when you buy a used car?
Generally, it's much cheaper.
Right.
An MBI policy from an insurance company might cost you somewhere between $30 to $100 a year, whereas an extended warranty from a dealership could run into the thousands of dollars.
Wow, big difference. Are there restrictions?
Usually, yes. It's typically for cars under a certain mileage limit, like maybe 100,000 or 150,000 miles. So it's often a better fit if you have an older used car that's out of warranty and more likely to need those kinds of repairs. It offers that peace of mind against really costly breakdowns. But remember, it won't cover routine maintenance like oil changes or damage from accidents. That's what your regular insurance is for.
Right, so it fills a specific gap. Could be useful as people keep cars longer these days.
Exactly. It speaks to that trend of consumers holding onto vehicles longer and needing ways to manage those potential big repair costs.
Okay. Now, for something completely different and maybe a bit lighter, remember cottage cheese?
Huh.
Yeah.
The stuff that used to be, like, only on diet plates or in your grandparents' fridge.
Exactly. Well, apparently, thanks to TikTok, it's having this massive, unexpected comeback.
It's actually incredible. You've got young, protein-hungry consumers sharing all these new recipes online, putting it in smoothies, making pancakes with it, whatever. And it's led to a stunning 20% jump in U.S. retail sales over the past year.
20% for cottage cheese. That's wild.
It is. Brands like Organic Valley and Good Culture are seeing their sales just explode. Good Culture even posted on Instagram saying they were struggling to keep up with what they called wild demand.
Wow. So this isn't just a blip then. Is it sustainable?
Well, market research seems to confirm it's not just a fleeting fad. They're seeing double-digit growth in both dollars and in volume, quarter over quarter over quarter for 2 years.
2 years of double-digit growth. Okay, that's more than a trend.
Right. It's a sustained shift in consumer demand.
Hmm.
Dairy producers are apparently maxed out trying to make enough. Companies are actually investing in new facilities, new vats to increase capacity. But it's going to take time for the supply to really catch up to this new social media-fueled demand.
That's a fantastic case study, isn't it? How virality on a platform like TikTok can genuinely reshape an entire market and even strain supply chains for something as basic as cottage cheese.
It really illustrates it perfectly, how a seemingly simple trend can have these significant economic ripple effects across a whole industry.
Okay, and sticking with unexpected resilience, entertainment, superhero movies, there's been so much talk about franchise fatigue, right?
Oh yeah, constant talk.
But then Disney's The Fantastic Four, First Steps, just opened huge, $118 million domestically. That makes it the best Marvel film opening this year.
It did. And a key factor seems to be that it's being pitched as a zero homework required release, meaning it's separate from all the complex existing Marvel Cinematic Universe storylines.
Ah, so a fresh start might be what people wanted.
It seems that way. With the sheer volume of Marvel content out there, plus everything available on streaming, audiences perhaps appreciate not needing a PhD in MCU history to watch a movie. And while there's definitely been talk of superhero fatigue, this movie doing well, plus Warner Bros., Superman, also performing decently, it really reinforces that if the whole genre were to suddenly disappear, well, it'd be devastating for the industry.
So despite the fatigue narrative, they're still critical blockbusters.
Absolutely. They still seem to be pretty critical for the overall financial health of the film industry, kind of acting as anchors for the studio balance sheets.
Okay. Let's dive now into some of the deeper political and economic undercurrents that are making waves. First up, the Federal Reserve, the Fed. There was a court case recently. A judge rejected a lawsuit trying to force the Fed to open its interest rate meetings to the public.
That's right. A U.S. District Court judge ruled against an investment fund called Azoria Capital. The court said that the Fed's key committee, the Federal Open Market Committee, or FOMC, isn't subject to the Sunshine Act, which is the law requiring many government meetings to be open.
And the person behind that lawsuit had ties to Trump and was critical of Fed Chair Powell.
Yeah, Azoria's CEO is reportedly a Trump ally and had been criticizing Fed Chair Jerome Powell for not cutting interest rates faster. He even suggested that it might be politically motivated to undermine Trump's economic agenda. By the way, the Fed is widely expected to hold interest rates steady this week, but everyone's going to be parsing your statement for clues about a potential rate cut, maybe in September.
Always watching the Fed. But beyond just interest rates, the Trump administration seems to be eyeing much bigger changes for the Fed itself, right?
Yes. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent explicitly stated the administration intends to shake up the entire institution. And Michelle Bowman's recent elevation to lead banking regulation. That's seen by many as signaling a push to slash regulations for large U.S. banks.
Slash regulations. What's the argument for that? And what are the concerns?
Well, the argument for it is generally that deregulation would reduce burdens on banks, potentially making it easier for them to lend and boosting economic activity. The concern, voiced by critics, is that weakening regulations, especially after the 2008 financial crisis led to stricter rules, could potentially weaken the banking system and increase the risk of future instability.
And they want staffing cuts, too, even beyond what the Fed already planned.
Yeah, the Fed is already planning to reduce its workforce by about 10% in the coming years through attrition and whatnot. But officials like Bessent and former Fed Governor Kevin Warsh want even deeper cuts. They're calling for a look at plenty of deadwood, suggesting the Fed is bloated and inefficient.
So a push for less regulation and a smaller Fed. What's the ultimate goal driving this?
It seems to be part of a broader ideological push, really. The view is that the Fed has become too large, too powerful, maybe too independent, and that its regulations stifle growth. Again, critics worry that deep cuts could impair the Fed's ability to conduct crucial economic research, supervise banks effectively, and respond to crises.
Yeah.
It really gets at that fundamental debate about the Fed's role, its independence versus accountability.
Okay. This kind of ties into another major policy area with huge economic implications: immigration. There's a Penn Wharton budget model analysis suggesting that President Trump's stated policy of mass deportations could actually backfire on the U.S. economy.
Yeah, it's a really interesting analysis. It projects that a hypothetical 4-year plan to remove 10% of the unauthorized immigrant population annually could actually increase federal deficits by $350 billion.
Increased deficits? How? Wouldn't removing people save money?
Well, the model suggests the opposite. It predicts it would also reduce GDP by 1% and could even slightly dent the average worker's wages over that period. Over 10 years, the negative impacts would be even more severe.
Reduce GDP and wages. Why?
The analysis notes that while authorized lower-skilled workers might see a temporary, small pay bump due to less competition in certain sectors, higher-skilled workers would likely be worse off overall. Their reasoning is that higher-skilled workers often rely on lower-skilled workers to make their job easier and to make their life more comfortable. Think childcare, construction, agriculture, hospitality.
Right. So disrupting that lower skilled workforce has ripple effects upwards, and certain industries would be hit harder.
Definitely. Industries like agriculture, where an estimated 42% of crop farm workers are unauthorized, would be hit particularly hard, according to the model.
Okay, but the White House disagrees with this analysis.
Strongly. They dispute these findings. They emphasize what they see as the immense costs that everyday Americans are forced to bear due to illegal immigration, and argue that there's no shortage of American minds and hands to fill any jobs that might open up.
So, two very different economic perspectives on the impact.
Exactly. Many economists, however, tend to warn that large-scale deportations, especially combined with the existing demographic trend of an aging U.S. population, could indeed lead to significant worker shortages across various sectors, which could, in turn, drive up prices for consumers. It's a really complex economic calculation with very strong opposing viewpoints.
Okay. And we also can't ignore the impact of Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill Act, the big tax and spending package on social programs. It seems to make the largest cuts to the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, SNAP, which most people know as food stamps, in the program's entire 86-year history.
That's correct. It's a very significant change. It potentially jeopardizes assistance for over 42 million people who currently rely on SNAP. And beyond the direct impact on recipients, it could severely affect small, independent grocery stores, especially those in rural areas that often rely heavily on SNAP dollars for their sales.
Right. How much money are we talking about in terms of cuts?
The Nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office, the CBO, projects the $187 billion reduction in federal SNAP spending over the next decade as a result of this bill.
$187 billion. That's huge. What's the impact on those local grocery stores you mentioned? What are their specific concerns?
Well, some grocers worry that if a significant portion of their customer base loses SNAP benefits, they might be forced to raise prices on everyone else, or maybe even cut staff or reduce hours themselves. In the worst case, it could potentially lead to store closures, creating what are known as food deserts, areas where access to fresh, affordable food is already limited and becomes even worse.
And the argument for the cuts often involves work requirements, right?
Yes. Proponents argue that new or strengthened work requirements within the bill will push more people into employment. However, many studies on past work requirement implementations suggest they often don't actually increase long-term employment rates significantly, and they can lead to people losing essential assistance. Plus, you might see job losses in food-related sectors if overall SNAP spending decreases substantially. It's a policy with really direct, localized impacts on communities and businesses.
Okay. Finally, before we wrap up, there have been recurring headlines about the blending of presidential duties with private business interests. President Trump's recent trip to Scotland, for instance, opening a second golf course on his property there, while also meeting with foreign leaders during the same trip.
Right. Critics point to instances like that as part of what they see as a continued pattern of using the trappings of the White House, the prestige and access of the presidency, to promote and potentially enrich his private businesses. His required financial disclosures do show millions of dollars in income from various ventures, including things like cryptocurrency tokens and branded products sold online.
And there was the issue with the airplane from Qatar.
Yes, That caused quite a stir. The acceptance of a luxury 747 jet from the government of Qatar, reported as a gift intended for use as Air Force One, has raised significant ethical concerns for some watchdog groups and critics. They point to possible violations of the Foreign Emoluments Clause of the Constitution, which generally bars federal officials from receiving gifts or payments from foreign governments without explicit congressional approval. These reports just underscore that ongoing scrutiny of potential conflicts of interest when private business intersects so directly with high public office. Ouch.
So, okay, what does this all mean when you put it together? We've covered a lot today. From those staggering investments in AI and its pervasive influence, on hiring, entertainment, even security, to the really intricate dance of global trade deals and how they impact everything from shipping logistics right down to your grocery bill.
Yeah, and we also look at the shifting landscape of economic policy. Big debates around the Fed, immigration's economic effects, changes to social safety nets like SNAP, and how these broader forces really intersect with your personal finances, like those new charity deduction rules.
This deep dive, I think, really reveals how interconnected all these seemingly disparate topics truly are.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
The AI revolution isn't just about cool tech. It's fundamentally impacting labor markets, investment strategies, even how we verify our own identities online, as we saw with that data breach example.
Right. And trade negotiations, they seem like high-level government stuff, but the ripple effects hit inflation, state economies, even the strategic positioning of global powers like the US, China, and Russia.
Exactly. And policy changes, whether they're on taxes or social programs, they have these direct, tangible consequences for millions of individual Americans and for local businesses, like those rural grocers relying on SNAP.
So we're really seeing a world in constant motion, aren't we? Where something like a TikTok trend can actually reshape an entire industry, like cottage cheese.
Huh. Yeah, the cottage cheese effect.
And where political decisions made in Washington or Stockholm echo through pretty much every corner of the economy. Your ability as a listener to connect these dots, that's what makes you a truly well-informed citizen.
Definitely. And maybe it raises an important question for you to consider, thinking about all this. As AI becomes increasingly integrated into, well, the very fabric of our lives, think about it, from our investment portfolios managing our money to the security systems verifying our identity, what new forms of accountability or maybe even new economic models might be necessary, to ensure its transformative benefits are maximized while we effectively mitigate those potential risks we talked about, like data breaches, job displacement, or even market distortions.
That's a big question to chew on. What kind of guardrails or new thinking do we need for this AI future? Well, we hope this deep dive has given you a clearer picture of the forces at play right now and maybe some things to keep an eye on moving forward.